All right, welcome everybody. This is Carrie Solar from the Department of Higher Education here in Ohio. Thank you for joining us today as we review this curriculum for training our campus athletic staff. A few housekeeping reminders real quickly. One, just a reminder that we are recording this webinar today for some folks who are unable to join us but are interested in reviewing the content. So if you have not muted your phone or your computer or the application, if you could do so now, that would be great. I'll be co-presenting with Jill today, so controlling those background noises and muting folks will be a little bit more difficult from my end than it typically is. But any help or assistance she can provide in that area would be great. That way also any of that background noise or conversations you may be having does not transfer to others as they review the recording. Also up on your screen, there is a chat room. That's where we usually direct questions. So Jill and I will pause at two different points in the presentation to allow you to ask questions on the materials that we just reviewed. So if you have questions, please feel free to type those into the chat room as you are thinking of them. That way when we get to the time to pause for questions, I can go back, review them, and then Jill and I will answer them as we can. And so that would be the best way to contact us about any questions that you might have with the material. Also, if you have a cell phone at your desk or any other electronic type device that might be near your computer or your phone that might cause some interference or background noise, our last couple webinars since they updated the application, there's been some feedback is the best way I can put it, like you hear from a microphone when it gets too close to a speaker. And I've been informed by the WebEx team that that is likely the culprit if someone has their cell phone too close to the microphone embedded in your computer or in your office phone or whatnot. And so that causes feedback. So please try to keep any any cell phones or electronic devices away from those two items, at least while the webinar is going on, to try and minimize the potential for that feedback. And without that, I think that covers all of my housekeeping items, and we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn over to Jill here in a moment so she can introduce herself, but many of you may have met Jill this summer if you attended one of the prevention regional workshops that we did across the state. She was instrumental in helping us, develop that curriculum and those workshops, and just really appreciated her partnership and her expertise and enthusiasm she shared there. Jill, if you know her from here in Franklin County, is a fantastic asset to our campuses here in Ohio, particularly those in Franklin County with whom she gets to work. Her partnership in this effort for this program in particular has just been invaluable, and I'm just very truly appreciative of all of her willingness to help, her expertise, her enthusiasm, and her friendship throughout this process. So I'll introduce Jill, and then I will go ahead and forward it and let her introduce herself a little to the group.
Carrie, thank you so much. I really want to reiterate what Carrie said just about having the opportunity to work on these programs and these projects over the summer. The truth is Carrie is the vision behind all of this, and I have been really privileged and really enjoyed the opportunity to work with her on this and to when you can combine two brains, the product is far more than what you could have ever done by yourself. And so I just am so grateful for the opportunity to partner again with Carrie and to get to kind of ride along with her in her genius, visionary programming that she's created. So, and in addition to that, a really great part of this is if you did get to participate in the summer programs, in terms of thinking about how to create a prevention strategy on your campus, or if you didn't, it's totally not a big deal at all. But this is a really important component of a prevention strategy on any campus. So the timeliness of this, that we had those prevention strategy conversations in the summer, and now we're moving towards thinking about who the leaders are on our campus and how we can really implement real change and prevent sexual violence on campus. This module is just an ideal next step. So as Carrie mentioned, my name is Jill Davis. I work in Franklin County with SARNCO, with a Sexual Assault Response Network of Central Ohio. I think I'm technically supposed to say the Ohio Health SARNCO. We are under Ohio Health. I've been told by our media people to include that. So I work with colleges and universities to provide support through our SARNCO services. We're a confidential resource, but I primarily work on prevention strategy, education, technical support, training for faculty, staff, administrators, outreach and relationship building. One of the things that I feel like I've been able to be most successful at is being an outside person to help facilitate conversations with groups within a campus, because a lot of times you have women's gender and sexuality studies programs and student life folks and athletic folks, and they're all coming from different lenses and trying to figure out a way to combine forces to really implement work on their campuses that will be effective. And so sometimes having one person to help synthesize all of that and bring in everybody's strengths is a way to really help mobilize campuses and move forward. So that's what I do. My work history has been in community development and working on social justice issues and social work type issues. I started out as a Peace Corps volunteer in Morocco, and that's where I really got into understanding gender-based violence. I was a maternal and child health volunteer, which primarily focused on preventing intimate partner violence. I later worked in India and in Bangladesh at the Asian University for Women, which is a startup university for women across Asia. But I am very happy to be home in Columbus, and I feel like I have more to bring to a community that I know better and that I've grown up in. So I'm super excited to work with all of you and continue this work. So thank you so much for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Given, the current zeitgeist, I think this program is both timely and relevant to the work that many of you are already doing on your campuses with efforts to change the culture surrounding sexual and intimate partner violence. And so, as Jill mentioned, this is really intended to be a program to build on the prevention efforts maybe that you're already doing, or that, you started strategizing about a bit and the summer through one of the workshops or through some other efforts that you've been undertaking on your campus. We really feel strongly this program is a best practice approach intended to supplement those current trainings that you may be offering, that would include any trainings that you may be currently doing for faculty, staff, students, campus law enforcement with regards to compliance and reporting protocols, how and when to report, how to identify gender-based violence, what to do about that. Not that any of that information or thoughts have been in the newspaper recently here in Ohio, but or let alone any other part of the nation. But it really is an important component. And the focus of this training is really on how to understand where and why violence occurs and provide the skills to better recognize how to address normalized violence early on so that we can change the culture down the road and make an impact in our campus community, specifically looking through the lens of our athletic teams and athletic programs on our college campuses here in Ohio. What we're going to review with you today, we have developed 3 modules, and if you're going to do this training, Jill and I feel very strongly that you should plan to do all 3 modules, not 1, not 2, not try and combine all 3 into 1 or 1.5 or any like that. Really need to do all 3 modules. There will be opportunities for you to make some modifications or adaptations for your specific campus. That might be based on current campus climate data or survey results that you have received or will be receiving by the end of this month if you used our vendor. Maybe some things that you know are going on or some current issues that you have been working to address within your campus community or within your athletic programs. But the program, we really strongly feel, is most effective if it is completed in full. Each module allows for some time for kind of a lecture/discussion, depending on how you, the facilitator, want to set those pieces up. It also has a skill practice section, so for each module, so you will be given some kind of scenario that you can break out and then use the skills or the information that you received earlier in that module and really try to put it into play and into action. What did we learn? What are we seeing? What should we do? What didn't we identify? Those types of things. And also opportunities for you to integrate your policies and protocols. So if, you take a look at the curriculum and you decide, hey, we definitely want to do all 3 modules, but we don't want to do 3 modules in addition to our normal compliance or annual training that we do with our athletic staff, there is the opportunity for you to integrate those into this so that you just have, it can be an all-inclusive training versus a supplemental training. I will say that we'll talk about this later too, but we also will be strongly encouraging you to use some co-presenters, and we'll get into more of those details and in terms of our recommendations or considerations we'd like you to think about down the road later on in this presentation. I do want to say from the outset, this is not a required program from the Department of Higher Education. I know sometimes through this initiative, it appears that there are things that, because we're putting it forth, you must do. And this is certainly not a required program for the Changing Campus Culture Initiative. It will, however, meet the criteria for recommendation 2 if you're the point person for your campus. If you present it to staff, for sure. I'm sure most of your coaches and athletic administrators fall under staff. I know several of you probably have faculty members also working with your athletic programs on campus. So at least from those 2 perspectives under recommendation 2, those 2 groups, this would meet the definition of that type of program. It is not geared towards students. I really want to make that point from the outset. This is really geared towards those who are working with our campus athletic programs. It is not intended for the students in the room. It's really geared to that other lens of what are you seeing, what should you address, what your role is in the lives of the athlete, that type of thing. And Jill will get more in depth in that later when she talks gives you an overview of the modules, but just want to point that out. But we do think it'll open the door to some probably thought-provoking, challenging discussions. There will be some reflection that will probably need to take place. But hopefully it will give us all a better understanding of the roles we all can play to stop the pervasiveness of sexual and intimate partner violence and stalking on campus. So I'll turn it over to Jill, and she can give you some additional information about the program.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. So I was a college athlete at Ohio State longer ago than I'd like to admit, but athlete culture and the relationship between the athletic department and student athletes to the rest of the university is a big deal. Even if you're not at an Ohio State university and you're at a smaller school, the athletic department and the athletes have status on campus, which puts them in the position to they're already in leadership positions as part of their university. We also hear from schools that it's really hard to break in to engaging athletes and athlete staff just because their schedules are truly busier. They really have more on their plate than most other folks on campus. So those can present challenges that this program is those challenges were in mind when we designed this program. And what the content can do is help folks go to their athletic departments or their athletic departments engage their coaches and the rest of their staff by saying, this program emphasizes the values and content that will not only help you as athletes and athletic administrators and coaches meet your team goals, like this will enhance the culture within your teams to be more successful and also help you be leaders on campus to make the community safer. And so with that in mind, the content, we started out in the 3 modules. We are using evidence-based theory around culture change and social change theory, what we have in terms of social change theory, but also evidence-based prevention from public health theory around how to prevent violence at all levels, from society to community to relationship to individual, which is really valuable. Targeting and training and working with athletic departments means that we're really hitting the community level, which has a bigger impact, or has the potential to have a bigger impact in creating communities where violence isn't tolerated, which is the goal. So we start out in the first module kind of looking at who student athletes are, emphasizing the leadership responsibilities that they have, talking about the roles that coaches play. Coaches go into coaching because for the love of the sport and the love of athletics and the love of the athletes. They are natural role models within their own teams, but also within the campus and the greater community. So helping coaches to see where they already are powerful in creating a culture where everyone is successful and is reaching their full potential is where we kind of start. We also address some of the myths that folks come in with that, the information that athletes get, especially male athletes, are getting in the just general world right now through their media and in the conversations around sexual violence has created a valid fear. And I say valid fear in that, it's understandable that men have this fear that they're going to be falsely accused of rape, or that everyone's going to see them as potential perpetrators. It's scientifically not true that those things are the case. And so what we want to do is really help address those issues, validate that we hear that people are experiencing those feelings, and then show people, especially men, that not only do we not see you all as a bunch of potential perpetrators, but we want you to go through college not having a fear that you're going to be falsely accused of rape, even though being falsely accused of rape is the same as getting hit by lightning, or less likely than getting hit by lightning. But telling people that isn't effective. So we want to break down the culture and help folks understand how they're being influenced by messaging that influences the way that we view ourselves and our relationships and other people, so that we can promote the leadership potential that athletes have, so that men feel like they can get engaged in this issue in a meaningful way, and that they feel confident to talk about this as well, and then promote equality with their teammates, break down homophobic and sexist cultural norms, and of course this is something that female athletes benefit from too. We typically oversell this or put an emphasis on the male role in this because men don't feel like this issue is for them. Women overwhelmingly understand that sexual violence is an issue that they are going to be confronted with because that's our culture. So that being said, we're looking at the roles in which athletic departments play. We're going to look at what are the real reasons and the attitudes and the norms and the behaviors, that create a culture where sexual violence occurs. And then we're going to build skills around how to support survivors so that when people do come forward, even if it's a sexual assault or if it's sexual harassment, that we're building skills to provide support for survivors so that they can be, on the road to healing. And for coaches, that means getting back in the game and getting back to practice. This can have a severe impact on individuals, but also the team. So that really matters. We also know men are victimized at much higher rates than people recognize. And it's really important that we can create a team culture where when men are harmed, that they don't feel shame, embarrassment, fear, and anxiety to report and come forward, and that they too can heal and move forward and succeed and reach their full potential in their lives as well. So that's kind of how we hit Module 1. We're looking at some of the cultural factors that create communities where violence is tolerated and commonplace. That's talking a lot about culture and media and the way we're impacted by that. It's really helping folks understand that sexual violence, we talk about it's only 6% of men that commit sexual assault. And I say only as in it's still a significant number, but it isn't that all men are potential perpetrators. And that's really good news for creating a world where violence doesn't happen. But in order to, so it's, I guess what I want to do is we're going to clarify the idea that we're teaching consent. Folks are always hearing, like, we've got to do consent education. And it's, well, consent education is really important, and it's a really important part of prevention. What we're also doing is recognizing that it isn't actually that we need to teach all men not to perpetrate. We need to teach good people to recognize sexual violence when it happens, because toxic cultural messages have made it difficult for good people to recognize rape when it happens. So that's really what we're hitting in Module 1. We're going to go a little, we're going to build on it a little more in Module 2. This is like Carrie talked about. It's really, really valuable if you can do all 3 modules, because they will build upon each other and highlight and reinforce certain concepts which are really important. So we're going to bring that culture piece a little more specifically into athletics, and look at the interaction between the culture that we live in and how team values are actually in place that are antithetical to these attitudes of violence, which is a great way to show coaches and athletes how buying into these this prevention work isn't just about preventing sexual violence. It really is about promoting a culture and community where your athletes can reach their full potential and live without fear of harassment or shame because of who they are as people. And there's skills they can take further on into, beyond the team and into their lives into the future. And this matters because coaches are naturally in a mentorship position. So coaches are really interested in hearing how they can continue to build their mentorship skills in positive ways and impact students' well-being. We talk a little more about perpetration and what are the factors that influence perpetration, so that we can build on the skills to identify sexual violence and identify risk behaviors that mean we could be empowered to identify troubling behavior and intervene and address violence before it takes place. There'll be skill building more around that, and then again, like how to handle, continue to build that, how to support survivors and make sure that we're providing the most survivor-centered response that we can for our students, so they can get the healing that they need and move forward with their lives in a positive way and in the ways that they want. And then we continue that into Module 3. Looking at the impact of trauma, understanding sexual violence as a trauma that truly impacts the neurobiology of the body and has implications for health and behavior of students, so that we can still support them and understand the issues that they might have, so that we can help get them the services and information they need. We'll look at kind of building into on that 3rd module, looking at the connection between kind of really picking apart and going into a little bit deeper understanding of the dynamics of power and status and where violence lives in our culture. A way to think about that is inequality takes place when one group has more power than another, and violence lives in that gap. So when there are people who have power, you see then a higher risk for violence to be perpetrated against people who are marginalized or who are living in the community with less power. That is not to say that all people in power are perpetrators. That's not the case. It's just that we know that when people perpetrate, it's about power and control, using sex and sexuality or sexual orientation to overpower another person. So because of the power dynamics on campuses with athletics, that means athletes have the power to promote social justice and the power to stand up against inequality and promote intolerance for violence and disrespect for other people. Coaches are really interested in their athletes taking on that role. And then we get a little deeper again into preventing in terms of how do coaches and teams understand and recognize, we talked about earlier, we have this culture that normalizes violence and makes it difficult for good people to recognize violence when it happens. So we're going to dig a little deeper into then really building up skills again on how do I know if I witnessed an athlete saying something that is, how do I know if that's sexually violent? How do I know if this is something that I could be concerned about, or if this is just students being students? You know, they're in a place developmentally where they're going to be talking about issues of relationship and sex. So how would somebody know for certain, and how would you deal with a situation where you're not sure if you should be concerned or if it's normal behavior? So we're going to help build those skills as well. Yeah, any questions? Well, I guess we're going to do questions in a bit. So I'll pause there and send it back to Carrie.
Yeah, so we're at a point to take questions. You can type them into that chat room. Specifically for questions right now, we're looking at the information we've covered thus far. We will talk about implementation and some support and how you access the program and whatnot in a minute after this question period, but I just wanted to pause for a moment in case anybody had questions about the modules and the information Jill just shared, or even just generally about the program or any of that sort of stuff. So if you have questions, please feel free to enter them into that chat room. If you just want to send them to me, I'm Carrie Solar. I should appear on the drop-down menu at some point, and I'll be happy to share those with the group, and then either Jill or myself or both of us will answer those questions. So anything about the modules or any of the information covered to date? We'll give it a minute or two. As we're waiting, I would hope to, I know I mentioned at the beginning this should be a supplement to some of the training and compliance components that you're already doing. It may also echo some work that your campus is already doing in the realm of prevention. But hopefully you saw what we meant when we said this is kind of a supplemental best practice approach, moving kind of a step above the just entry points or whatnot to provide your campus with some additional tools to address this issue, and specifically doing it through the athletic lens. All right, not seeing any questions come through. If you're in the process of typing one, please feel free to finish your thought and your question that you might have. We will do questions again at the end, and I will certainly be happy to read them off and address them. But we'll move into the next part, which is talking about how we're going to implement the program, our recommendations or strong suggestions that we may have for implementing it so that it can have its maximum effect, and then also review a little bit about support services that will be offered to campuses who would like to use this program in their campus community. So to start with, you need access to the actual program and the modules that Jill just reviewed and provided insight to. So I will provide you with that PowerPoint, as well as the scenarios for the skill building sessions that were highlighted earlier. You must email me directly to obtain these items, and I'll provide my email addresses both on the screen right now, but it'll also be provided at the end. If nothing else, your campus point person who probably forwarded you the email about today's webinar, if you are not the person, can contact me directly as well. They would have my contact information. At this time, we're not intending to post it publicly. We may do so down the road, but right now, in order to obtain the materials, you will need to contact me directly, and those materials will be available starting next week. So feel free to email me at any point if you're interested, and then as soon as I have the A-OK to release it, I will do so. There will be some blank slides in the PowerPoint that will be provided to you, and that's for you to implement your campus-specific policies if you'd like to integrate that into the curriculum. As we went through the modules, we left room in each of the modules for you to kind of talk about reporting protocols or expectations that are specific to your campus, because those are going to vary to a degree from campus to campus. What are your specific responsibilities and designated roles? From your campus point of view, we left sections in there for that to be done in each of the different modules. That way, no one module was all about compliance, but it had a little bit of everything, a little bit of the items that Jill reviewed, a little bit of compliance, and then the skill building components. You will also have a notes section at the bottom of each slide, and you're going to find the narrative that Jill and I are providing for you to use. We strongly encourage you to review it and definitely adapt it into your own voice. I heard Jill say many times this spring as we were developing the curriculum for the prevention workshops, and I agree with her wholeheartedly. It's hard to do somebody else's presentation. You have to be able to put it in your own voice for it to be authentic and for it to not just read like you're reading a script. That invites more genuine conversations and dialogue with those that you're facilitating the program to. So definitely review it. If when you're choosing to implement it and prepare to adapt it in your own voice. That being said, we really want you to use the content provided. Skipping over certain content items to save time or because you feel it may be repetitive may lessen the impact of the program for your audience. Even if you feel like maybe some of the points have already been reviewed in different trainings and stuff that you've been provided or that you provided your community, I would still encourage you to go over those points again. You never know when somebody, prevention education teaches us it may take 7 touches to a message before somebody actually gets it. So even if they've heard it 6 other times before, this might be the time that actually comes through and it makes meaning for them. Or maybe they've experienced something or been impacted by something in their personal private life that you're not aware of, where all of a sudden whatever you're talking about in that moment takes on a whole new meaning or they're looking at it through a whole different lens than they were previously. So really encourage you to use the content that we're providing in whole, try not to skip over things or, combine it down to make things go faster and save time. Jill will discuss with you in a moment kind of some strategies for your presentation, especially with content areas, because there will be some areas where some of you may not fully be comfortable in presenting the materials, or you're comfortable presenting it, but please don't anybody ask me questions, or maybe not invite a dialogue about this. And I think, we want to encourage you to be able to have those dialogues in an effective manner because we want to chat. We're in higher education. We should be challenging point of views, and we should be thinking about things critically and learning from one another. But we also don't want it to become the runaway train, and we also don't want, you try to drive a point home with a presentation and have that point completely undermined by somebody else in the room. So, Jill will talk to you a little bit about, how we handle those things, as well as that would be part of the support package that would come down the line with some coaching and training in those areas. When we created this program, too, we had inserted photos, advertisements, YouTube clips, song lyrics, etc., all those sorts of things to use. So it's not just like this PowerPoint, which is just a bunch of words being thrown at you, but there are some visually appealing slides that also support the information and content we're asking you to use. That being said, part of the reason why I said I will make that available to you as soon as I get the AOK is I'm still waiting for final approval of some of that stuff from the Attorney General's office, getting the okay on some of the copyright items that may be subject to copyright, just to make sure that we're not, drawing everybody into a life of crime by using this. That would be very counterintuitive. Or counterproductive, excuse me. So that's going through the vetting process right now. As soon as I have that, I will send you the slides as you can use them. There may still be some blank slides where you are going to have to do your own kind of legwork and Google things and try and identify images or clips or whatnot that you feel reinforce messages that you're trying to drive home. Please, if you do that, you review that with the appropriate people at your own campus before using it in a presentation. Certainly we don't want you to get yourselves in trouble too with anything that you may provide. And we provide some YouTube clips that we feel drive home some messages. You might have a better one that either Jill or I are unaware of or did not remember when developing this, and you're certainly welcome to take out what we're offering and then replace it with that YouTube clip if you feel it makes the point better or it's a more relevant point to your audience. All that being said, again, just make sure you review it with the appropriate people so that, everything is done on the up and up and doesn't cause any other problems. And, of course, there are many reasons why you'll want to review the content fully before putting the program in place and actually doing the presentation. And one of those pieces, too, should be that you fully understand the AV setup you might need, especially if you are using movie clips or song lyrics or anything like that for your audience, that you have this thing set up appropriately in whatever presentation room or whatever room you're doing the presentation in for your audience, so they can feel the maximum effect of the program. Jill?
Yeah. So continuing on implementation, with including, making changes and such to the content, one of the things that we've learned in working with athletic departments is they feel like, oh my gosh, how do we, for folks that are trying to partner with the athletic department, whether they're student life folks or Title IX folks or rape crisis center prevention folks, there's a sense sometimes that it's like, how are we supposed to get access to these people? We are never even able to get a meeting to even begin this work. That is part of something that we can do to help you with implementation, is how do we create that partnership to even begin to provide training and education. So that's something we can do. And that's the thing within athletic departments. We have folks who might be support staff for students, and it's like, how do I get access to the coaches to provide this information? They're just so busy. So we also have strategies for that. One of the things that I can help with is, because I was a student athlete, I do understand the college culture or the athletic culture, and that athletes feel like unless the program is designed specifically for them and reflects the experiences that they have as athletes, they're not going to be as engaged or as interested, and it will be harder to get back in the door. So the content that we've created, when Carrie's talked about, kind of really sticking with that content, that does matter in the sense that this has been created with a real care and concern for what will engage athletes and reflect the culture and values and context that they're coming from. So if you are looking to make some edits or change content, that's something that we can help you with in the implementation and adaptation process. That's all stuff we can do. I think we can go, next one. So, and that's the technical systems piece. So I'm here for that. For some folks, it can be anywhere from like, hey, we have partnerships with people. Well, these are some of the. Get some feedback here. There we go. I'm not sure if somebody's not muted or if we're having technical difficulties there. Okay. So campuses are going to have unique situations. Like we said before, an athletic department at Ohio State University is not going to look the same as an athletic department at the University of Cincinnati or at a community college or at a small liberal arts school. And we've worked in Franklin County in every one of these situations. And so we can help you identify your context, look at what challenges you might specifically be having in your community or with the different individuals you need to work with. We really are interested in continuing partnerships and building the partnerships that you might already have with your local rape crisis centers. So I'm not coming in to replace anybody who's already doing prevention. We would want to bring them into that conversation. One of the things that some campuses have found is we're doing prevention, but none of us are athletes. Like, we need somebody to stand up in front of the room or have a voice who says, I was an athlete, this is why this matters, to have that credibility. Athletics are very much about like in-crowd folks. And so having an in-crowd person, which is a role I can play, if I would come to the campus, I look like somebody who used to be an athlete and who, it's the joke I made earlier this summer, is now my triathlon is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But you can tell there's an athlete in there somewhere still. And that can be helpful in terms of just saying, like, I understand you. I am not coming from the outside. This is going to mean something to you. And that's true of, when we partner with any community. So this could be adapting the content to meet a particular contextual need, helping you decide who you need to partner with, who the contacts might be that you need to bring to the table, how to deal with people who don't seem like they're really interested in partnering, but they might be like the gatekeeper to getting in the door. what to do in terms of like, well, how do I answer some of these like really complicated questions about content? And if you feel like, well, I'm not a content expert, I don't know how to talk about the content, that's something that we can support you through. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the general overview. Like literally, the way to summarize it is like, I'm like a consultant. You know, we can go over wherever you are in this process of figuring out how to implement this curriculum and get this partnership going on your campus and make a plan that fits for you, and make a plan that is also either part of a prevention strategy or that could be an important part of a prevention strategy that could be built later on your campus. Carrie, does that sound about right? Did I hit all the points on that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, just to kind of champion, the assistance will be provided via Jill. And, you know, as Jill has shared with you, her background as a former athlete, obviously in her current role with her passion for sexual violence prevention and also being a co-author of this program, I think, you know, I would strongly encourage you to seek her expertise and advice when it comes to adapting this program. A few housekeeping type things I want to just note. Jill's time and with, you know, to provide that support and that technical assistance is built around some deliverables that also have some internal parameters. So when the Chancellor sent the letter to your campuses back in February regarding athletic programs and the efforts being made there at the time through the lens of, you know, in reflection of what was happening at Michigan State or coming out of Michigan State, you know, we really, you know, when that letter was sent out and whatnot, we had 70 campuses, all the campuses in Ohio responded. 70 indicated that they had athletic programs of some type on their campus, intercollegiate athletic programs. So there are 70 campuses that would have access to this curriculum as well as access to Jill's time. So when I say that there's internal parameters built around that, I just really want you to think about that in terms of, you know, if you do choose to engage her expertise and whatnot, that you understand that she has other campuses that she's probably engaging with and giving up her time to as well. So, you know, that means, you know, when you decide to host a call with Jill to talk about implementation or adaptation or strategies or any of those types of things, that's awesome. I want you to take advantage of it. But I also want you to make sure that you're coming prepared for that call with the questions and the things that you would really like to discuss with Jill, discuss with your group ahead of time, that the key people are around the table for that call so that if there are questions or stuff or, oh, you know, I really wanted to know about this, but so-and-so's not here right now, so I'm going to have to get back to you. I'm going to need you to answer some additional questions, that we cut back on that, because all of those time is more time that Jill has to spend with one campus when there might be, you know, 10, 15 others waiting in the wings for that same time and attention. So just really asking you to be intentional and come prepared to those calls or any of those interactions that you would like to utilize Jill for. And I really hope that you will engage with her so that we don't also have to internally pull back, and that would be me, and say, you know, this campus, you're going to need to, you know, give them maybe another hour, but then at that point we need to cut it off. And then that would leave you hanging and not in the best position. So we don't want to do that. So just making sure that you're prepared and ready to go. You know, she reviewed the assistance that may be offered. There may be some other things that we haven't thought of that come up that are unique to your campus or we just haven't thought of. Jill and I will discuss those on a case-by-case basis as they come up to make sure that we're trying to give you the support that you need to implement this program on your campus. And I just want to also note that Jill's assistant should not be perceived or represented as she's going to do the presentation for you on your campus. If you're choosing to implement this program, you'll likely want to use it again in the future and in the future and the future. So I really encourage you to think about her assistance and anything she provides as a train-the-trainer type model. So she will be providing that coaching and that mentoring and that guidance to, or one of the services she can provide is that coaching, mentoring, and guidance to your campus staff that may be actually doing this program so that they are prepared to do it not just this year, but maybe the next year and the year after that. My budget runs out, my state budget runs out June 30th, 2019. New governor, new legislature, new state budget. I may not have the funds to be able to provide this in the future. And so unless you plan to employ Jill to come to your campus every year, and you can take that up with her separately, but unless you plan to do that, you want to build this to last. So really, I would encourage you to think of Jill being a train-the-trainer type person for your campus, that coach, that cheerleader, versus the guest lecturer type thing. I know she's talked about, I can come and speak in that athletic voice, and I think that's really important in terms of obtaining the buy-in, but you really need to be prepared to run this program in the long term. And that's what the support that ODHE is offering through her is meant to do in helping you implement this program and bring all the right people around the table. The technical assistance will be made available after Labor Day to campuses who have accessed the curriculum. I'm doing that intentionally. I want to give you some time to review the modules. So email me and review those modules a little bit, internalize it, discuss it amongst your team there at the campus before engaging Jill. That way you're really prepared to really engage her on the level of assistance you're going to need or support you're going to need, or to pick her brain a little bit about things and strategize about where to go. You've had some time to do that, and it will only run through the end of March. So theoretically, that gets you through. I know we've lost the window for the fall sports season, but it gets you in a place to maybe get the program in place for your winter sports and even early spring sports. Get these training pieces in place, and then that should help you adapt it and be ready to go for the fall next year for those coaches before their seasons start, depending on your training cycles there. But as you email me to accept the curriculum, I will also give you information at that time when I send you the program on how to contact Jill and how to get that technical access, that technical assistance moving forward. So.
That sounds great. Carrie's going to jump in really quick just to reiterate, pick up, just to kind of amplify something that you said. If we could go back one slide, that would be great. There was a point that I failed to make that I really wanted to highlight that you touched on that's really important there, which that the utilizing a presenter from your campus community who is well-trained. It is really important that the person delivering this information feels confident in the content and is able to answer difficult questions. And I say that because I think in doing this work, a lot of times I've heard people like, yeah, I understand gender stereotypes, like I get it. But without a little extra training in terms of how do I respond to the really difficult questions in the room where if the answer is not framed correctly, we run the risk of reinforcing harmful stereotypes and reinforcing harmful attitudes and undermining the value of our content and kind of undermining attaining that learning objective. And that's also something that I can help when Carrie talked about train the trainer. That's a program that we deliver at Sarnco. In that content, you wouldn't need to do the formal program, but I can give you that coaching. Or it might even be identifying who on campus is already somebody who is an expert in this work. You have faculty on campus who can support this work as well. And if they're faculty who already understand a lot of this cultural piece, they're going to be, I've yet to find somebody who's not really interested in getting involved and working to support and promote this education on campus. So that can be a part of that technical support that we provide. Another piece is, again, when we started thinking about who do we want to bring to the table, Carrie talked about making this sustainable. So who delivers the programming is really important in terms of their training, but also is there a coach who can co-present with a prevention expert or somebody who really gets the content well, or is there a coach who's really invested in learning this and understanding this well and coming back and facilitating this programming and helping to broaden the facilitator skill base in their organization? Is there a former student athlete is a great one too. Looking at also bringing in, like if you have the prevention staff, which not everyone does in a rape crisis center, how can you involve them in providing support to answer difficult questions? They may be there to answer questions, and you can have a facilitator who feels really good about delivering the content, and then you have that expert support there on the side to help really emphasize and answer some difficult questions. So those are things that you can do to ensure that you're creating a program that's effective, that really is making cultural change on your campus, and like Carrie talked about, is sustainable and can be repeated and replicated into the future within your campus community. Oh, I need to say one last thing. I quoted Catharsis Productions. Catharsis is where I received my prevention training. They are outstanding. They have what they call the Force of Awesome Institute. It is an incredible, it's, in my opinion, by far the best opportunity for becoming we call it a preventionist, and getting that training in how to actually address and change culture and attitudes and norms in this type of education. It is its own unique skill set. The language that I use around sexual violence is a consequence of toxic messaging that we receive, and it makes it difficult for good people to recognize sexual violence when we see it, is a direct quote from their programming. So I want to make sure that I give them credit for that. But if anybody is interested in going deeper into somebody who really wants to be trained and really make this an important part of their work on campus, we've got resources for continued training, as well. So.
Awesome. Are there any questions or anything? I haven't seen anything come through, but just want to give a moment. I know we're coming up at the end of our time, but to see if there's any questions from the group on the program or the implementation or the technical assistance. This is where we need the Jeopardy music. Seeing none come through right now, up on your screen is, again, my email address. A reminder, if you want to look at a copy of the program that Jill and I reviewed with you today, as well as instructions on how to contact her for the technical assistance, please email me at that email address. Also, if you just want to obtain a copy of this webinar today, a copy of it just to review with others on your staff, before determining whether or not you want to engage with the program or anything along those lines. Also, please let me know, and you can email me there, and I can send you that as well. And at that point, still not seeing any questions come through. I thank you, Jill, again, for being a part of this and for the support you're going to provide our campuses looking to engage with this program. And thank you to all of you for taking time. I know this is an incredibly busy time of year, so I really value and appreciate the time that you've given today just to listening in and learning more about this program. Hopefully, many, if not all of you, will choose to use it to help change the culture on your campus. So thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you, everyone.